And so what this says is there are two ways to change behavior. The first one is by educating people, helping them have the opportunity to change their own behavior, understand they need to change it. But in the end, if they still don't change their behavior, what they're doing is engaging in externality causing behavior. We need to adopt the externality related instruments. Now, if you think that behavior can't be changed, look at the COE, right? Everyone's driving cars, COE, a lot fewer people are driving cars. That's a behavioral change. And so the point here is, had you gone out and just said, hey, we have too many cars on the highway, there's a lot of congestion, please drive less. That might have gotten some reductions, but in the end, you needed a much stronger instrument, one that was addressing the externality end of it, because people understood the problem with the cars. They just weren't going to do anything about it.
No, yeah, but I think the CO is a bit odd, because if I paid so much for a car or the piece of paper, then I definitely want to drive it around.
Yeah. So good point. Now we're saying, well, but is the COE effective? Right? So we have to say, yes, that's the one we adopted. Had we gone back and stopped, we might have said, well, wait a minute, we can adopt the COE. That will reduce the number of cars. But will it reduce the amount of miles? Will it be effective? What's the real goal we're trying to pursue? And will this policy instrument, the COE, address that? Now, having driven in Jakarta, or at least ridden in Jakarta, I'm thinking the COE was pretty effective, but that may not be a fair comparison.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Kenneth. I'm from the Singapore ETH Centre. Thank you very much. It was a very crisp and clear presentation. I wondered, the project of, in a way, complicating the kind of binarism between private sector and government. I wondered about the sense of civil society as a third space, in a way, in this. It doesn't apply so much, perhaps, to the COE example, but I'm thinking many of the examples around waste. There are clear ways in which civil society now is increasingly having an important role in this debate, and whether that might offer a fourth category to these kind of instruments. I very much like your stick, carrot and sermon, and I'm wondering if there is a fourth category which somehow is more viral, perhaps, that might more be attuned to the civil society dimension.
There may be. This is just one way of organizing the policy instruments, and there may be other ways that bring out other factors. Though I would suggest that even the things you're talking about, the civil society, can be embedded. You can find that in here. For example, if you recall, under the information providing or the information related instruments, that first path where the government takes a relatively passive role that sets up the rules, what it's saying is NGOs, civil society, let's share information, let's share our values, let's tell people we're going to provide the rules for exchange. You can't lie, you can't slander, you can't engage in misleading, well, actually we can. But the point is it establishes the rules of play and invites society then to engage in that. The other place, of course, is in the more active role for government, where it engages in active persuasion, using the bully pulpit, the advertising, do something drastic, cut the plastic, lots of public service messages to change the values of individuals. So it is there, but what I would observe, having worked on this is one of the less well integrated parts of the policy instrument choice literature.
Is there questions from the back? Hi, Professor. This is Jofen from Center for Livable Cities. Thanks for your excellent presentation. There's a lot of discussion on plastic bags. To add to that gentleman discussion on plastic bags, I'd like to ask you a few questions on the use of plastic bags. So, in Singapore, unlike from other countries, the plastic bags, together with other waste, food waste, goes to an incinerator plant. And like what that gentleman has pointed out, these are high calorific in value, and so it goes to an incinerator plant, and you generate electricity out of it. And from that perspective, from that argument, the moral persuasion to reduce the use of plastic bags is left. Because if you look at the perspective that eventually what we have consumed, it will eventually go to the incineration plant and get generation of electricity. That's actually less, I mean, in terms of convincing the consumer to use plastic bags is less. So I wanted to ask you on your opinion on how effective is your policy instruments in reducing the use of resources as well as encouraging waste reduction. Thank you.
Okay. Your point is actually a very good one. Now, the thing I would remind you is that my example was based on a hypothetical country. This is an imaginary country. And it was I did that very much on purpose. But what I would say is that takes us back to that very first point, which is, what is the environmental issue you care about? If Singapore isn't plagued by the problems with plastic bags that other countries have, then this isn't an environmental priority. And or alternatively, you might say, well, our problem, we do have some of those problems. The issue is not enough of our plastic bags are making it to the incinerators. So the question is, the starting point for this is, have you identified an environmental policy goal? And just reducing the overall usage of plastic bags might be very appropriate in San Francisco. It might not in Singapore. I would argue that the behavior in Singapore is much more careful with respect to things like where the plastic bags end up than it is in some of our major cities in the U.S.